Support for the Leadoff on WGLT and WGLT.org comes from the Central Illinois Regional Airport, where travelers are one stop away from world destinations. Connections on Delta Airlines to Atlanta are available daily. Close, convenient, CIRA. More at CIRA.com.
Congressman Darin LaHood says the killing of a top political leader of Hamas was justified. That's one of the things you need to know to start your day for Thursday, August 1st. I'm Ryan Denham, and this is WGLT's The Leadoff. Now let's lead off with a rare voice in the discussion of carbon sequestration, the president of One Earth Energy. WGLT's Eric Stock has more.
You might remember a few months back when McLean County's government was weighing zoning matters related to carbon sequestration. That's when carbon is captured before it enters the atmosphere and is dehydrated, then stored underground. Gibson City-based One Earth Energy has been trying to spearhead this process in Illinois, applying for well permits and authorization to build a pipeline. While the permits are still pending with the EPA, the project is largely on hold due to a state moratorium. Environmentalists had long voiced a desire for Muhammad aquifer protections, which ultimately weren't included in the legislation. One Earth President Steve Kelly recently weighed in, saying state geologists have plotted out carbon storage locations in an effort to minimize any potential harms to the drinking water source.
We engaged the geologists from the Illinois State Geological Society to pinpoint where they felt they knew where the aquifer was, and we diligently positioned our potential wells now outside of that region so that wasn't an issue for us.
Much was also made at the local level about what would happen in an emergency, such as a carbon leak. Kelly says the Illinois Emergency Management Agency didn't share those concerns.
You know, a lot of the IEMA agencies don't see CO2 pipelines significantly different than natural gas, crude oil, or other pipelines that are running through their districts today. So they feel like they're already prepared.
You can read more about One Earth Energy's plans at WGLT.org. With the reporting from Lindsay Jones, I'm Eric Stock.
Here are some other stories we're following in the WGLT newsroom. A Bloomington man has been sentenced to 80 years in prison for a shooting death in 2022. Jalen Bones was convicted of fatally shooting 29-year-old Timothy Manns in an apartment on West Jefferson Street. Bloomington City Councilmember Tom Crumpler says he will not run for a second term next year. His ward includes the city's east side. Crumpler says he wants to travel more. And former Central Illinois Congressman Rodney Davis has a new job with the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. He'll move from a Washington consulting firm to be the head of government affairs for the U.S. Chamber. You can find more on these stories at WGLT.org. Despite the difficulties that the killing of a top political leader of Hamas creates in achieving a ceasefire in Gaza, Central Illinois Congressman Darin LaHood says the death was justified. Israel has remained silent, but Iran has blamed it for the attack. LaHood sits on the House Intelligence Committee and spoke yesterday with WGLT's Charlie Schlenker.
Hayaniah has blood on his hands. He's been involved with almost every terrorist attack on Israel, and many involving the United States over the last 20 plus years. And so he is a terrorist. He needed to be taken out. The timing on these type of things are never good, but he is somebody that unfortunately deserved this type of action. I would also say Israel also took out one of the senior leaders of Hezbollah in Beirut yesterday, a guy named Shakur. Again, these are terrorist actors who have been involved with lots of different killings of civilians. And obviously, Hayaniah was involved with the attack on October 7th on Israel that killed 1,200 people.
It still complicates ceasefire talks. How do you get around that?
No doubt about it. Our number one goal should be getting all of the hostages back. It should be working towards a ceasefire. And I commend countries like Egypt and Qatar and the United States for trying to reach that resolution. But in many ways, Hamas could have ended this a long time ago by releasing the hostages and agreeing to the terms to do that through a ceasefire. It's more complicated than folks think. Israel is our number one ally in the Middle East. It is a democracy. I don't always agree with everything they do, but when you get a chance to take out the number one leader, I think you have to do that.
Similar things have happened over the last 10 months, and the region has avoided a multi-front war. Can that continue to happen?
I look at Iran as really being involved with a lot of malign activities throughout the Middle East. If you look at their support for the Houthis in Yemen, you look at their direct support of Hamas in Gaza, you look at their support of Hezbollah in southern Lebanon, and of course the Shia proxies in Iraq. They have a number of mullahs that rule Iran with a religious bent to them, and they want to wipe the U.S. and Israel off the face of the earth. So when you're facing an existential threat like that and an adversary like that, we do not want an all-out war in the Middle East, and we should do everything to avoid that. However, when you have an adversary like Iran that continues to engage in terrorist activity throughout the Middle East against U.S. interests, you have to fight fire with fire.
You and Democratic Representative Danny Davis have introduced a measure called the Strengthening Families Act. It would reauthorize Title IV-B child welfare programs and change some of them. What needed an overhaul?
We are the top Republican and Democrat on the Work and Welfare Subcommittee or the Ways and Means Committee. We put together a bill that had been in the works for about a year to figure out how we reauthorize the code that looks at helping children that are caught in the foster care system that in many ways don't have any other place to go. And so we came up with 16 different proposals. We increased some funding, but secondarily, we make it more efficient, more effective, more accountable to help kids to be successful in life.
In what way are efficiencies introduced and programs made more effective?
For instance, in many respects, we would give, in the past, a block of money to states and let them do what they did. But there would be restrictions on that money, on how it could be spent, where it could go, what could be done. What we did is we reached out to the states. We had 3 separate hearings over the last year. We brought in subject matter experts that worked in the foster care system, worked with children in the different states, and we got different ideas on how, instead of doing it by block grant, how do we give them flexibility and the ability to use that money in different ways.
That's Congressman Darin LaHood, who represents parts of Bloomington-Normal. He spoke with Charlie Schlenker. You can hear the rest of their conversation tonight at 5 on WGLT's news magazine, Sound Ideas. Before we let you go, the Bloomington Public Library will host a ribbon cutting on its new expanded space alongside the McLean County Chamber of Commerce. That's today at 11:30. A full celebration with tours is coming Saturday morning. That's it for today. I'm Ryan Denham. The show is produced by Rosalie Truback. You can subscribe to the Leadoff on the NPR app or wherever you get your podcasts.